Here's this well-engineered, magnificent, beautiful Bluetooth speaker. Now I hope you do realize that I'm actually being sarcastic about it. Now this piece of shit actually did retail for $350 to $400, and from what I know it still does today. Definitely not worth that price. It's just botched with a bunch of shit thrown together in one wood box pretty much. It's that bad. So if you want to talk about Chinesium, this is as bad as Chinesium gets pretty much, and I'll show you some of the bodge job that was done to this thing pretty much. Now that big gaping hole is where the LCD TV, which is a full-blown TV, it's not just a monitor, but I did have to pull it out because I had to repair the LVDS connector on back because they bent a couple pins in there and the cable wasn't going in all the way, and over time it worked its way out and it was acting like if it was a cracked screen, but the screen wasn't cracked. It was just the fact that that cable pulled out over time pretty much. I'll go and bring the camera inside this beast pretty much and to show you some of the bodgery done. And right there, that red board there, that's the FM tuner. It's literally just hot glued on there. Right here where there used to be a board, it broke off because the stress of these cables and stuff was wrapped around the other cables, and this would be the board. It would have been mounted like this, but it snapped off over time, and in turn that also broke other cables too as well, which is what shorted the 5-volt whale on the amplifier board, which was causing this not to work and the Bluetooth not to work, because there is a separate 5-volt linear regulator on the power supply, or not the power supply but the amplifier that was actually powering all this pretty much, and then this here is just powered off the regular 12-volt supply. Well, you can just see, well thought out and engineered, yeah right. This here is the cable that goes to the head unit. Instead of running the cable internally or just running a signal cable going onto the backboard and soldering directly, they decided just to take the easy way out, drill a hole back there, and then you would have to connect this cable manually, of course, to the board there. There's another hole right there, and there's, trust me, a lot of random holes everywhere pretty much. The only thing I could say they did right, at least they used wood glue to assemble this and just not hot glue like sometimes they use, so they did that part right. Up there is for the LEDs pretty much and so forth. But I'm going to go ahead and actually repair this thing because someone actually paid to repair this piece of shit pretty much, so I'm going to go and do that. And for the speakers, as far as the speaker goes, I had them removed because one of the cables was just wrapped around the terminals. Not soldered, not nothing, literally just wrapped around the terminals and came loose, so I ended up resoldering all the connections on the speaker. And then half the screws were missing. There's only 4 screws and even 2 screws on that one, just holding the entire speaker in place, and the customer did not do it because I asked them. It was actually like that from factory pretty much, so this thing is as bad as they get. There's the head unit there, and you can see the bottom. This all actually lights up and stuff, and yeah, there's actually a horn back there too, but I gotta see what's going on once I pull that horn out and see what they're actually using behind there. That would probably be funny in itself, but I'll go and show you some of the repairs that I actually did to this thing already. Here's the amplifier for that giant Bluetooth speaker that you just saw earlier. And yep, this is it. It's only one channel, so it's a monoblock. It's not stereo, and this is a Class D amplifier. That's what you're getting pretty much. Now the problem with this amplifier wasn't the amplifier itself. It was actually with this linear regulator, which I did remove. And you can kind of see there where I actually botched the protection resistor too as well, because that was also blown when this shorted out. And what happened was, because the cable was pulled, the leads were exposed and they touched each other and shorted this linear regulator out, so there was no 5-volt whale going to the Bluetooth module or any of that. So I ended up fixing it, and now it does work because this thing is putting out 5 volts now. So I'm going to go and put it back in, and then I'll show you some of the other problems I found as I was working on this thing. Here is the repair I did to the LCD TV. And yes, this is a TV. It's not just a monitor, as it does have a tuner inside it, and it also has VGA input and all that on it. Now the problem was with this LVDS cable right here, which ended up ripping some of these cables, because when that board broke, it pushed this all the way out and ended up ripping the cables. It also somehow bent the two end connectors, but I think they actually put it in that way and just squashed those two connections, because you can see there's no wires going in there anyway, so they might have squashed it in during assembly time. But either way it goes, I replaced the LVDS cable on there, and then when I did install the new one, I also RTV'd it down, and I used the actual silicone that's actually safe for electronics. You want to make sure you get the neutral one and not the one that smells like vinegar, because otherwise you use the one that smells like vinegar, it can end up corroding the connections over time. I also did the same thing down here for the controller board. I went ahead and RTV'd all that down, so this is going to go back in there. I'm going to go and show you that it actually works first. And here's pretty much what they did. This was the funny part. You had to use this separate adapter besides the cable for the speaker itself to actually power the LCD TV, because they were too lazy to put a 12-volt regulator separate to power this, or even just run it off the 12-volt power supply that's already on there. But either way it goes, you just plug this into there. We're going to fix that though. I'm not going to leave it like that, so don't worry about it there. We're just going to go and show you that it does work. And there you go, pretty much. And it is fully working now, and the good thing about it is all the buttons work and everything, so the LCD TV does live to see another day. The customer thought it was just cracked, but he'll be happy once he sees that actually working again. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back into there, and then I'll show you some of the other bodgery that was done to this Bluetooth speaker. So here you go. I went ahead and ran some power cables to the main TV board, so that way I can run it internally instead of externally like the way they had it. So customer would no longer need that silly AC adapter that he was using externally. Now he can actually power this thing from one cable, so he'll probably be happy about that. I went ahead and replaced the digital coax cable that actually goes to the digital out on the TV. The reason for that is because the original cable was just shoved in there, and you can see it's broken. It's missing the metal center conductor, so I went ahead and replaced that. I also went ahead and, as you can see, I remounted that board back on there. I mounted it lower so it doesn't pull down on everything, and I unwrapped the cables from it so that way it's not interfering with any of the other cables as well. I'll probably go ahead and wire tie the rest of this down a little bit more neater, and then I'll move on to installing the TV back into this thing again. So I went ahead and pulled out the EQ/preamp board somewhat out. I don't want to pull it all the way because I don't want to pull on those cables because they're pretty short. But this one here was actually the problem because it wasn't getting 5 volts. And this here is the Bluetooth, USB, and SD card reader. It also has an input on it too, which actually goes to the rear panel. That was broken off, so I ended up soldering cables directly to it. Also the reason why I'm not pulling it all the way out, because I don't want to stress these cables because they're just really tight in there. But just to give you somewhat of a view inside there, and you can see here, this is the preamp board, and you can see the other board right next to it for the mic input/echo board and so forth. But there you go. This here is the head unit, of course. It just sits in there, nothing to it really, pretty much. But I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together, and I'll show you it working pretty much. So here's inside where the speaker normally would be. Figure I'll go just show you a quick peek of it. But I also found the actual splitter going for all the LEDs and stuff like that. It's just hanging down because they just use hot glue, of course, to glue it down. And you can see right in the rear, that's the amp, the LCD controller, and the power supplies back there. And then up here, it has some lights that actually project to the ceiling. But there you go. I'll see if I can light it up a little bit better so you can get a better view. But that's what it would look like inside pretty much. So I'm going to go and mount the speaker back in it, and I'll be right back with you once I have this thing fully working. So I went ahead and finished the repairs to this giant oversized Bluetooth speaker, and as you can see, the display is working. And yes, now it's running off a custom internal power supply instead of using this crap where you had to actually plug a separate AC adapter to power on the display. Now it can be ran off one cord instead of two. And I don't know why they ever did that, because people are likely going to lose the AC adapter, and then they're going to have no way to actually use the television in this thing, because yes, it does have a TV too as well, and the antenna jack's on the back. It does play audio now. Bluetooth's all working and everything, because I fixed the 5-volt rail as well, so now everything's powered on and it's working. I just can't play any audio due to copyrights and stuff like that, but you can see the lights are on clearly and stuff like that. And even the radio and stuff works, and all the lights and everything works. And right now it's displaying a light show on my ceiling, which I'll go ahead and move the camera and I'll show you that in a second. Here's what the Bluetooth speaker is actually pretty much projecting on my ceiling. And you can see it's showing some arrows, and yes, there is blue and green as well, but the red's clearly brighter. But there you go. And then finally, here's the light show the speaker is actually putting on, and I have all the lights turned off so you can actually see how it looks. So there you go. This concludes the video, and this giant oversized Bluetooth speaker is now repaired.